On Saturday, the 6th of August 1994, the lifeless body of a young woman was found by an unsuspecting member of the public just outside the quaint village of Rainford, located in the northwest of England. The victim had been strangled, stripped, and left face down in a field just meters away from a busy dual carriageway. A large-scale murder investigation would go on to recover some of the victim's clothes over 13 miles away, in addition to a number of key witnesses, one of whom claimed to have found a nude woman in the back of a van pleading for help at the place and time the murder occurred. Despite these and a number of other promising leads, the killer remains unidentified. Welcome to the Crime Portal. This is the case of Julie Finley. Located roughly 13 miles away from the northwestern city of Liverpool, the Rainford bypass is a section of the A570 which lies between the towns of Ormskirk and St Helens. The bypass was constructed in the late 1930s to replace the original route into the village of Rainford, which has a population of under 10,000 people. For decades, the area has been a popular destination for cycling enthusiasts of all varieties thanks to the different routes on offer. On Saturday, the 6th of August 1994, a number of keen cyclists gathered at the Rainford bypass for a time trial event organised by the Liverpool Century Road Club. The starting point for the event was located near the Wheatsheaf pub, which at the time of recording is an Indian restaurant by the name of Holdy. One rider in attendance that was due to take part was a 28-year-old computer engineer named Kevin Darby. At around 1:30 p.m, Kevin stepped away from the crowd outside the pub in order to find a quiet spot to relieve himself, and made his way a short distance along Ormskirk Road, which runs parallel to and then joins the bypass. Kevin stepped into the adjacent field, behind some bushes, and was met with the horrific sight of a deceased young woman. In his own words, quote, "The body was naked, lying face down. The girl's head was hidden under some bushes. I ran back and got a friend to confirm what I had seen. We then called the police and made sure no one went near. I told the police where I'd been, then waited for them to arrive. I carried on cycling, but I think I was in a state of shock." A murder investigation was jointly launched by Lancashire and Merseyside police, led by Detective Chief Inspector Francis Ewell. Officers pitched a tent over the spot the body was found and went on to search the surrounding areas for potential evidence, but unfortunately, nothing was recovered. The victim had been strangled. Injuries to their upper body and arms led police to think a fight or scuffle may have taken place. However, DCI Ewell would later clarify, quote, "At first it looked as though she had been in the wars, but most of the marks were very superficial, probably caused by the undergrowth. There was no evidence of a struggle. The only significant marks were on her throat. At first, the pathologist said these could have been caused by a hand. As the bruising became more apparent, he decided it was more likely to be something about an inch wide." Despite the victim's clothes having been removed, there were no signs a sexual assault had taken place. It was estimated by the pathologist that the victim had been killed between midnight and 1 a.m. on Saturday the 6th of August. Local residents and those in attendance at the cycling event were questioned, but offered no useful information. Using fingerprint records, the victim was identified due to having a record for petty theft. She was 23-year-old Julie Finley from Liverpool. Julie was the second eldest of 5 children born to Albert and Patricia Finley. The close-knit family lived in Liverpool, where Julie is said to have had a relatively happy childhood. After attending Yew Tree Comprehensive School in Dovecot, Julie went on to begin a hairdressing course at college, but dropped out and drifted through several jobs. Unfortunately, Julie began experimenting with drugs at the age of 17 when she tried magic mushrooms for the first time. From there, the teen would move on to much more dangerous substances such as heroin and crack cocaine. At the age of 19, Patricia convinced her daughter to enter a rehabilitation clinic. Unbeknown to her family, Julie had started seeing a man with his own drug habit named Ng. Little is reported about this individual other than him being half Chinese and 10 years older than Julie. Her mother would later tell the People newspaper, quote, "We believe she began thieving to feed his habits. She just got in with a bad crowd. Her real friends couldn't believe how she changed." For a short time, Julie returned to the home of her parents on Finch Lane in the Dovecot area of Liverpool, but sadly it wasn't long before Ng convinced Julie to leave with him. The pair had no permanent home and would instead stay with various friends, mostly drug users and sex workers. Despite her drug issues and known associates, Julie's family have always vehemently denied she engaged in sex work at any point. Albert and Patricia confirmed with police that the last time they had seen their daughter alive was at 4:30 the day prior to the discovery of her body. Julie had stopped by the family home to collect some cards and presents from her birthday the previous Monday. She had left after spending around an hour at the address. They could not think of anybody that would want to harm their daughter. Detectives quickly began trying to establish Julie's last known movements between the time she left her parents' home and being found dead the following day, roughly 9 miles away. They learned Julie had been with her boyfriend at a flat in the Toxteth area of Liverpool until around 10:30 p.m. Julie left the flat on her own, apparently to try and buy drugs, and promised to be back no later than 1:30 a.m. Shortly after leaving the flat, Julie was spotted in the Huskisson Street, Mount Vernon Street and Hope Street areas of Liverpool, but after that, the trail went cold. Julie's boyfriend called police to report her missing when she failed to return. DCI Ewell made a number of public appeals for information. In particular, he wanted to hear from sex workers in the area that may have seen Julie on the night she disappeared, in addition to anybody near the location the body was found several miles away. On Tuesday, the 9th of August 1994, Albert and Patricia spoke to the media about the tragedy of losing their daughter and also appealed for information. Patricia spoke about the last time she saw her daughter, quote, "She looked well, her skin was clear and her hair looked lovely. She looked as though she might be off the drugs." Patricia also appealed directly to a woman that called the family home twice on the weekend Julie was murdered. The caller identified themselves as Helen from Huskisson Street. The first call came on Saturday the 6th, prior to the family being contacted about Julie's death. The caller is said to have informed Patricia that she was due to meet Julie later that day, but was no longer going to be able to make it. The second call came the following day, with Patricia explaining, quote, "She asked, 'Was it Julie?' And when I said yes, she became hysterical. She screamed down the phone, 'Oh no, not Julie, not Julie.' She sounded as though she knew something about what had gone on. If she does, I urge her to ring the police and help us find this evil person." Unfortunately, the caller would never be traced. The lay-by at the end of Ormskirk Road, just off Rainford bypass, next to the field in which Julie's body was found, is known locally as a lover's lane, where couples park up their cars and spend time together privately. A couple living in a bungalow a few hundred yards away from the scene were repeatedly questioned after they reported seeing a red car in the lay-by on Friday night. The witness told the Ormskirk Advertiser, quote, "There are always cars parked in the lane, but this one seemed different. Courting couples usually park up with the lights off, but this one had side lights on and there was no one inside. We spotted it when we came in at 10:30, and when I took the dog out for a walk at 11, it was still there. The dog started growling and wouldn't go any further. The hair stood up on its back, and I turned back. I never thought anything about it until the next day when we heard about the murder." As Julie was undressed at the time she was found dead, and her clothes were not recovered near the scene, police had appealed for anybody that had found women's clothes to come forward. Reports as to what Julie was wearing that night seem to differ. Some newspapers state that she was wearing a white cotton top with 3 buttons, while others state she was wearing a white blouse. It was also reported on several occasions that Julie may have been wearing a jacket, but no description was given. On her bottom half, Julie is said to have either been wearing black canvas jeans or a miniskirt. All reports state that Julie was wearing boots. 1 week after she was last seen alive, it was reported that police recovered a bra they believed Julie was wearing on the night she was killed. This would be confirmed by one of Julie's sisters who lent the item of clothing to her. The discovery was made on waste ground near the Royal Liverpool University Hospital, close to where Julie was last seen alive. The find was made possible thanks to an unidentified caller that contacted police to inform them of a neatly stacked pile of women's clothes alongside a pathway in the area. DCI Ewell would later tell the People newspaper, quote, "He thought it odd that they'd been stacked so neatly. It was as though they had been very carefully removed from a plastic bag. He thought there was a white blouse, dark skirt, black boots and a bra. We carried out a fingertip search of the area but only found a bra. We'd like to hear from anyone who might have innocently picked up and kept these clothes." The call was made by a male believed to be in his 20s or 30s and was traced to a telephone box in Norris Green in Liverpool. Because the caller did not give his details to police, DCI Ewell appealed publicly for the man to come forward. Because Julie was known to associate with sex workers in areas they were known to operate, police would also publicly appeal for curb crawlers, a term used to describe men who attempt to pick up sex workers in their vehicles, to come forward. It was announced that police were giving men known to have been in the area until Saturday the 13th of August to get in touch, with DCI Ewell stating, quote, "If those men we have identified as being in the area have not come forward, we will be contacting them. and we will not be responsible for any embarrassment caused. A mobile policing unit was set up on Hope Street in Liverpool, close to where Julie was last seen. Despite the warning given by police, a number of men did not come forward and were subsequently interviewed by detectives at their homes. No significant information is reported to have come as a result. On Monday the 15th of August, 9 days after the discovery of Julie's body, there was another appeal from police urging an unidentified female that had contacted them with information to come forward. The woman rang police on Sunday the 14th of August at 2 p.m. DCI Ewell, quote, "It was evident she knew a lot about Julie and could help us piece together her final hours. When police tried to call the woman back using the number provided, they discovered it was a fake. It would eventually be revealed that the caller had given the name Tina and told police that Julie had planned to meet a taxi driver from Prescott, just over 8 miles south of the spot her body was found. Despite a number of appeals over the years, Tina has never been identified." It was revealed later that week the mystery caller who had tipped off police as to where they could find Julie's bra had identified himself to investigators. Unfortunately, the 17-year-old wasn't able to provide any further information and came across the clothes by chance. DCI Ewell was still convinced that the clothes, with the exception of the recovered bra, had been taken by somebody. In late August 1994, he spoke to members of the press at the location Julie's bra had been found and appealed once again for anybody to come forward that was in possession of the items. An inquest into Julie's death was held on Wednesday the 31st of August 1994, led by coroner Howard McCann. The inquest was adjourned pending the completion of the police investigation. There were no updates in the investigation for a number of weeks, prompting police to release a new picture of Julie to the public, taken just 2 weeks before she was killed. It was hoped that this would result in more people recognising the victim, as, up until this point, only pictures of Julie as a child and a teenager had been circulated. The end of September also marked the first time that police appealed for the owner of a white transit-style van seen in the lay-by Julie's body was found around the time of the murder. Despite a number of appeals over the years, the van and its owner have never been traced, although it remained a common feature within multiple witness statements. In an effort to generate new leads, police teamed up with the Liverpool Echo newspaper to produce a poster showcasing how Julie looked on the night she was murdered. The image was created by the Echo's graphic design team by combining the most recent photo they had of Julie with a picture of a model wearing similar clothes to the one Julie was wearing on the night she was killed. The poster was displayed publicly in a number of locations in Liverpool. DCI Ewell also announced to the public upon the release of the image that, quote, "I have now discovered that Julie had an appointment to meet someone at 11 o'clock on the night she disappeared. If she met him, then that person is either the culprit or the last person to see her alive." During the first week of October 1994, a sex worker from the Liverpool area reported to police that she had been attacked and had reason to believe it was the same offender that killed Julie. The woman was picked up by the individual in the Toxteth area of Liverpool the previous week. The man refused to pay her before throwing her down an embankment and repeatedly forcing himself upon her, after which he began to choke the woman. Speaking anonymously to the Liverpool Echo, the woman said, quote, "He grabbed me round the throat and said, 'I'm going to kill you. What's it like not to breathe?' I'm sure it was the same man. He told me he'd been with 2 prostitutes a couple of months ago and killed one of them. That makes you think of Julie Finley." The woman suggesting the attacker may have mistaken Julie for a sex worker due to the area she was last seen. After convincing her attacker to let her go, the woman began to run. The attacker gave chase until the woman flagged down a passing vehicle for help. She described the man as being in his late 20s to early 30s, about 5 feet 7 inches tall. He had brown hair, was cleanly shaven, and had distinctive forearm tattoos, including a snake and a dagger on his left forearm. He drove a silver Ford Escort or Vauxhall Cavalier with a license plate beginning M83. An e-fit of the individual was released to the public, with DCI Ewell commenting that any potential links would be looked into as the investigation into the woman's assault progressed. "I was unable to determine whether the perpetrator of the assault was ever identified, and the incident was never again referred to in relation to Julie's murder." The next big lead in the investigation came in the middle of November 1994 as a result of the Liverpool Echo's poster campaign, when a woman reported to police that she'd seen Julie on the night of the murder. The sighting took place at around 11:20 p.m. The woman was driving past the dental hospital on Liverpool's Pembroke Place when she was suddenly forced to apply the brakes as a young woman ran out in front of the car. The driver told the Echo newspaper, quote, I'm 99% certain the girl was Julie. She ran across the road to where a man was standing. This man was described as being 5 feet 10 inches to 6 feet tall, aged 23 to 28 with dark hair. He was wearing dark clothing and described as looking smart. A car was parked nearby, although no description was given. Police speculated that this man could have been a drug dealer Julie may have agreed to meet. DCI Yule would later tell the People newspaper, quote, "I'm not interested if he's a drugs dealer. I'm only interested in Julie's killer, and this man could hold vital information. We've spoken to Julie's regular drugs dealer and he denies seeing or arranging to meet her that night." Frustratingly, this individual would join the long list of people that police were unable to trace in the investigation, which continued until the end of 1994 with no notable lines of inquiry generated. In January 1995, Albert and Patricia Finley made the decision to move out of their family home in the Dovecot area of Liverpool. The memories of their daughter had become too much to bear. The final inquest into Julie's murder took place the following month on Monday the 13th of February, with coroner Howard McCann recording a verdict of unlawful killing. Although no other significant information was reported following the inquest, this did mean that Julie's body was finally released to her family in order for a proper funeral to take place. On Friday the 24th of February 1995, a service was held at St Dominic's Church in Hoyton, where Julie's family and friends gathered to pay their final respects. Over £500,000 had been spent on the investigation by this point, and it still remained very much active, although detectives were struggling to uncover any new leads. In an effort to change their fortunes, police sought the assistance of the BBC's Crime Watch programme. The episode, which aired on Thursday the 13th of April 1995, is no longer viewable online at the time of recording. However, the reconstruction featured during the segment on Julie's murder was shown in part during another episode later that year, which is still available online. The brief reconstruction starts by showing Julie leaving the flat in which she was with her boyfriend on the night of the murder. This was followed by showing Julie nearly being hit by the female driver as she made her way across Pembroke Place at around 11:30 that same night. The Crime Watch appeal generated over 70 calls, including one woman who claimed to have Julie's missing clothes. The caller, reported to have had a Liverpool accent, hung up before operators were able to get her details. DCI Yule also told the Liverpool Echo days after the appearance that he was looking for a particular individual whose name had surfaced as a result of the programme. Quote, "I am anxious to find out the identity of a drug dealer called Nelly and speak to him." Police would have to wait a few more months before the next major lead in the investigation, when, in early August, just days after the 1-year anniversary of Julie's death, a motorist came forward with a remarkable story. The motorist had picked up a hitchhiker on Friday, 21st of July of that year, from the Windle Island junction of the East Lancashire Road and Rainford bypass. The hitchhiker was male and described as being in his 20s and around 5 feet 8 inches tall, slim, clean-shaven, with light-coloured hair and blue eyes. He was wearing a royal blue, round-necked sweater, blue jeans and trainers. The hitchhiker's accent sounded as if he was from the St Helens area. He told the driver that he was on his way to visit his grandfather in the coastal area of Ainsdale, located just over 20 miles from the Rainford bypass. The driver of the vehicle said the hitchhiker seemed normal and friendly until they approached the lay-by in which Julie's body was found, at which point he became highly agitated. The hitchhiker went on to tell the driver how his motorbike had broken down in that same spot at the start of August the year prior. As he attempted to fix the problem, he heard banging and screaming coming from a nearby van. He approached the van and opened the rear doors to find a naked young woman. The woman screamed to the man, help me, for God's sake, help me." Before he had a chance to intervene, a male appeared and told him to mind his own business and that the woman was his girlfriend. The hitchhiker did as he was told and fled the scene. An e-fit of the hitchhiker was created and shared with the public, with DCI Yule telling the Liverpool Echo, quote, "The existence of this witness is the most crucial step forward since the inquiry began. I would stress that this witness has done nothing wrong. He is now in a position to do an enormous amount of good." Unable to trace the hitchhiker in the following months, detectives once again sought the help of Crime Watch in November 1995. The segment on Julie's murder begins by showing a portion of the reconstruction aired previously, followed by DCI Yule relaying the details of the hitchhiker's story. When asked about the legitimacy of the man's claim, DCI Yule stated, quote, "I think it's very credible. Certain things he told our witness, the driver, I and I alone know, other than anybody who was at the scene of Julie's murder. I firmly believe he is the last person to see Julie alive other than the killer, that he spoke to Julie, and in fact, the man he confronted was Julie's killer. If that is not the case, given what he knows, I must consider him a strong suspect himself for the murder. The Crime Watch appeal generated around 90 calls, but no specific details were reported. The majority of reports over the years state the hitchhiker was never identified. However, I managed to dig up 2 articles from 1996 that suggest otherwise. On Tuesday the 16th of January that year, the Liverpool Echo reported, quote, "A vital witness in the Julie Finley case has been traced thanks to an Echo poster. A young male psychiatric nurse has spoken to police about an incident he saw in a Rainford bypass. He recalls seeing a partially dressed woman in the back of a van late at night. The existence of this witness is confirmed within the article by DC Ian Clark, who is credited as being responsible for tracing the witness. The man was reported to have been heard speaking about Julie's death in a pub just a week after the most recent Crime Watch episode. An article in the Ormskirk Advertiser backed up these claims 2 days later on Thursday the 18th of January, when it was reported, quote, "The hitchhiker only got in touch this week because he had only just heard about the appeals. He thought at first they did not relate to him. Mr. Yule did not want to reveal the information the hitchhiker has given at this stage, but that he would be following up on it." Both articles clearly state the hitchhiker came forward, albeit the first implies he was found due to investigative work carried out, whereas the second implies he came forward of his own accord. Reports on and appeals to the hitchhiker specifically stop after this pair of January 1996 articles. Sadly, due to a lack of new leads in the investigation, Julie's case would quickly begin to see a drop in media coverage. Despite regular appeals from the police and Julie's family, the case would begin to turn cold. The case briefly made local headlines in April 1998 when it was reported there could be a potential link between Julie's murder and a 48-year-old taxi driver named Peter Sheehan standing trial for a string of sex charges. Sheehan's alleged victim was a local sex worker whose name was not released to the press. She claimed to have been violently sexually assaulted by Sheehan on multiple occasions. All of the assaults are said to have taken place when the girl was just 15 years old. During the trial, the victim told Liverpool Crown Court that she was introduced to Julie Finley by a fellow sex worker. She claimed Julie had been living with the acquaintance for several months, and that Peter Sheehan would often drive the trio around. In addition, Sheehan's victim told the court Julie was in fact a sex worker, and went on to detail how Julie was supposedly attacked and nearly killed months before her eventual murder. Julie is said to have been picked up by a man in a van and taken to a house where he proceeded to strip Julie and attempted to drown her in a bathtub. Unfortunately, these are the only brief details made available regarding the claims, and police would never comment on them publicly. Peter Sheehan was ultimately convicted of 2 charges of indecent assault on the 15-year-old, but was cleared of a number of other charges he faced, including 2 counts of rape, assault, and unlawful imprisonment. 9 years after Julie was murdered, on Tuesday the 5th of August 2003, it was revealed by Merseyside police that a woman had come forward saying she saw a young woman matching Julie's description at 12:30 am on Saturday the 6th of August 1994. The woman matching Julie's description was spotted with a man near the Wheatsheaf pub. The couple were witnessed arguing as the male individual attempted to drag the young woman into a nearby van, described as a white Transit. Despite the promising lead, there were no further reports relating to this witness. In 2005, it was suggested there could be a connection between Julie's murder and the killing of a sex worker from Liverpool named Anne-Marie Foy. The potential link was made due to the fact the 2 women were friends, having spent time living at a house on Seacroft Close located in West Derby not long before Julie's death. On September the 15th, 2005, Anne-Marie Foy was found dead at the age of 46. Her body was discovered in a wooded area off Crown Street in Liverpool. Similar to Julie, there had been no attempt made to hide the body. However, unlike Julie, Anne-Marie had sustained a brutal attack, with 62 injuries in total, including 21 to her head, and a shoulder injury consistent with being stomped. Despite 2 trials having taken place, Anne-Marie's killer remains unknown. No connection between the murders has ever been publicly established by the police. In 2005, 2006 and again in 2009, it was reported that evidence in the case would be undergoing new forensic testing, although no specific items were mentioned. None of these tests were ever reported to have resulted in new information. In August 2014, on the 20-year anniversary of Julie's murder, a £20,000 reward was offered by police for information leading to the arrest, charge and conviction of the person responsible. The appeal failed to generate any new lines of inquiry, once again leaving the investigation at a standstill. Sadly, the following year, in 2015, the original lead investigator in Julie's murder, Francis Ewell, passed away at the age of 68. A few years later, in 2019, 25 years after his daughter was found murdered, Albert Finley sadly passed away without ever finding out who was responsible. It was also in 2019 that the most recent lead in the investigation was first reported by the media, as it was revealed that there were potential links between Julie's killer and convicted murderer Christopher Halliwell. Halliwell is currently serving life in prison for the murders of Becky Godden Edwards in 2003 and Sian O'Callaghan in 2011. Both women had been abducted and killed by Halliwell, who was working as a taxi driver following nights out in the town of Swindon. Like Julie, both women were strangled to death. The crimes of Christopher Halliwell have been highly publicised over the years. The 8-year gap between the murders for which Halliwell was convicted has led many people to believe it's possible he could have killed more people. UK newspaper The Mirror managed to uncover a witness who claimed that in August 1994, Halliwell was working in the area that Julie's body was found. The witness, described as a former businessman, apparently had a window fitting contract with Halliwell at the time. Halliwell would work in the area Monday to Friday and return home to Swindon on the weekends. He told The Mirror that Halliwell was staying in the village of Orton, less than 10 miles from the Rainford bypass where Julie's body was found. At the time, the convicted killer was reported to be driving a 1986 D-Reg Ford Transit van, matching the one given on several occasions by witnesses in the Julie Finley investigation. This information is reported to have been confirmed by a second individual. Later, it would be revealed that the witness had originally contacted Wiltshire Police in 2011, as they were the force in charge of the Christopher Halliwell investigation. It wasn't until the witness was traced by the newspaper in 2019 that he spoke to detectives in charge of the Julie Finley investigation. In early 2020, it was reported that Merseyside Police would be launching an investigation into Christopher Halliwell's potential involvement in Julie's murder. Detective Chief Inspector Rachel Wilson was put in charge of the renewed investigation and told newspapers, quote, "We are investigating a new line of inquiry. A new witness has come forward with information and has been spoken to by detectives." Julie's mother Patricia, who was aged 75 at this point, encouraged the decision to investigate Halliwell further, telling newspapers, quote, "It's too much of a coincidence and needs to be looked at. I'd love justice to be done. Before I go, I want to see this man caught." Disappointingly, 2 years later, in 2022, a follow-up article in The Mirror had confirmed there had been little progress in the investigation. Julie's mum Patricia was understandably angered and upset by the lack of progress, telling the Express newspaper in December 2022, quote, "I don't think they've been down to interview him. I haven't seen a police officer in years. It drives you mad." At the time of recording, the most recent comment from Merseyside Police also came in December 2022, with the spokesperson telling the media, quote, "Merseyside Police conducted an investigation into the murder of Julie Finley in August 1994. We have and will continue to liaise with other forces where appropriate, in an effort to bring Julie's killer to justice." A spokesperson for Wiltshire Police also commented, quote, "Since Christopher Halliwell was arrested for the murders of Sian O'Callaghan and Becky Godden Edwards in 2011, Wiltshire Police has and continues, where relevant, to work with other forces across the country to ensure information is shared with them which may be pertinent to their investigations. Since 2016, the force has run a distinct operation, Operation Major, which has looked to nationally coordinate across forces information concerning Christopher Halliwell. Wiltshire Police has now commissioned an external review of Operation Major to ensure all reasonable lines of inquiry have been pursued to date." During that time, in 2021, a reward of £10,000 was offered by Crime Stoppers for information resulting in a conviction. Just days after celebrating her 23rd birthday, Julie Finley's life was cruelly and undeservingly ended in a horrific manner. Despite over 20 arrests, police have not been able to identify the person or persons responsible, and a number of key questions remain unanswered. Who was Tina, and why did this mysterious caller not get back in touch with police? Could Christopher Halliwell be the taxi driver Tina believed Julie was due to meet on the night of her murder? Who was the man Julie was seen running towards by the female driver that nearly hit her, and if innocent, why has he not come forward? Who, if anyone, has Julie's clothes? It seems plausible that because police recovered her bra, the clothes could have all been dumped in the same area. Did the hitchhiker ever come forward, and how credible was his story regarding a panicked, nude woman in the back of a van? More importantly, why didn't he call for help? Despite her family thinking otherwise, was Julie engaging in sex work, and could she have been harmed by a client? Police have repeatedly said they have no motive for the crime. It also remains unclear exactly what DNA evidence, if any, investigators actually have. When considering the brutal nature of the crime, it seems more than reasonable to suggest this may not have been the perpetrator's first or last offence. Julie's mother Pat is firmly of the opinion that her daughter's killer is not from Liverpool. She told the media during her most recent interview back in December 2022, quote, "I said right away no one in Liverpool has done that. I knew right away it was an outsider. I thought maybe a lorry driver or someone who has picked her up and then that was the end. I know 100% no one from Liverpool killed her. We have spoken to everyone who knew Julie. Someone would have slipped up by now." Now in her early 80s, Patricia added she would, quote, "at least like to see justice while I am alive." The amount of time that's passed since Julie's murder means the chances of uncovering further physical evidence are significantly reduced. On the other hand, 3 decades is a long time to keep a secret, and there is nothing to say by now the killer hasn't confided in one or even multiple people. If you're one of those people, or have any other information that could help to identify Julie's killer, please contact Merseyside Police via their website at merseyside.police.uk or call the UK non-emergency number on 101. The Crime Portal is a channel dedicated to exploring lesser-known murder and missing persons cases. For further information on this case, or to submit a suggestion for future videos, please visit the Crime Portal website. Thank you for watching.